But dude, wait, what were we just saying? So you were doing shows back for the first time in a little bit. And that's you're completely right that it's so funny. A thing you've done a million times can feel brand new, or like kind of just if you get out of the rhythm of doing it, you know? Mm-hmm. Like it's the same. I've said this on the podcast before, but sometimes I'm not the kind of person anymore who like works on music every day. Like that's just not my practice anymore. Like I'll go in these like really concentrated chunks. So it'll be like a month where I'm, doing every single day, long hours, like iterating tons of ideas. And then I'll take like, a couple weeks, maybe even a full month, like not 100% off, but like I won't touch it as much. And so it's these concentrated little bursts. And it's the same way when I sit back down to make music again. It's like the thing I've been doing all my life. I'm like, I have no idea. I've forgotten everything. So weird.
Dude, I totally know what you mean. And the thing that I actually think is kind of cool about that is taking such a break in between, like you come back to Ableton or whatever, and it's actually like a new experience in a way. And you might, let's say you always reach for this certain compressor or whatever you forget about, you might actually go for something different or whatever. I've been noticing that lately when I take these long breaks in between making music or whatever, I'll go and find new tools or old tools that I haven't even realized. Like I bought plugins forever ago that I'm like, oh shit, I forgot about this. This was on every one of my songs 5 years ago. And then now all these other things distracted me. So coming back and finding these new tools is like, or new old tools is like really inspiring.
Dude, but yeah, 100%, man. How were the shows in general? We haven't talked in a little bit. Like, how was your New Year's? How was your holidays? What have the shows been like? Like, what's life look like right now?
Man, so life is good. I'll say that first and foremost. I'm trying to do everything to make sure life is good in the sense of like how I perceive it, and that's. Even if there's negative things that are happening, because there always will be, like I'm trying to just like keep a positive mental attitude and just like be able to navigate it. So yeah, man, life is good.
And that's then, a constant process, right?
Oh, bro, it's full on monk energy. It's like, it's hard to, man. Like it's crazy. There's always blessings and there's always like bad things that are happening simultaneously. Like there's like at least in my perspective of things, there's like always these extremes, and sometimes the pendulum's swinging or the scale is tipping either way, where there's harder or not. But I don't know. There's like a saying that I'm going to butcher, but it's like God only gives you what you can handle or something like that. Yeah. And I feel like that happens often with me, whether that's good or bad. Like I get these like really huge spurts of good things happening, but then simultaneously there's like a lot of like hardships that have to happen. And it's like just being able to juggle both of those. But to your question about like New Year's and stuff, man, I haven't talked to you in forever, especially like this. Like usually you and I will catch up and do a call.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is a little staged, I guess. But regardless, man, I'm always happy to talk to you.
Familiar, bro. Like seriously, like it's cool. Like there's like a little bit of like the formalness to this podcast, but I'm sure we'll get looser throughout. But
yeah.
This is how many times have I done the podcast now?
Dude, I was trying to think. It's got to be, especially if you count like those videos we made for Serato back in the day too, which I think we released on this podcast. Actually, maybe we didn't. I don't know, but it's got to be like 4 times, 5 times, something like that.
I think so. I know I popped in on 4Bs once as well. It was like a little pop in.
Yeah, that was great. We did the mental health panel thing at Icon.
Yes, dude. Yes. This is actually kind of funny because this is all full circle. So I'm actually doing a talk at Icon on the 9th of February for all this AI stuff I've been doing, which we'll touch in this little Zoom here, but it's cool. I'm going back to them, and I was thinking about us too. Like I was like, wow, that was forever ago, a different era. And,
dude, it's crazy, man. Yeah, different era, and I was so happy with how that went. I think you were too. Like I remember we went out to eat afterwards, and we're just talking. It really felt like, yeah, I do look at that. I don't know if it really made waves like in the larger music scene or the dance music world or anything, but it for me felt like a transition point of like, okay, these conversations like really are valuable to some people. And all of us, like artists who were there doing the talk in front of the students, I think everyone kind of felt the same thing, you know, where it's just like, oh, like we all kind of needed that, you know?
I agree, man. And it was like, do you remember what year that was?
It was probably like
17 or
probably around
18?
2017.
Whatever it was pretty early to this, like the current mental health trend that everyone's so talking about now. Like this post-pandemic mental health thing is just blown up so much more, which is amazing. There's so many of my friends and even people that are older that were afraid of like the term therapy or mental health or things like this. Like it seems like everyone of the world collectively is like waking up, if for lack of a better term. But for us to do that at that time, in hindsight, was pretty early on, especially in the EDM scene, to like talk about this stuff openly and vulnerably, and especially having people like me and Getter on the panel who are like the most like, we make like really turned up, like, I don't know, music to like check out of like a lot of the mental health stuff that's going on in a way. So I don't know, it was just a cool thing to have at that time.
It was, man. And I give you a lot of credit for it. Cause I mean, that wasn't just for people who might not be aware, who are just hearing us talk about it for the first time. I mean, it was very much, I felt a collaboration with you and me. I mean, it wasn't just something for this podcast. It was like, I think something we had talked about doing for a while. And you had a large part in it, is my point.
No, man, it was dope. I love collaborating with you, man. Like there's always like outside of music and all these other things, it's cool. We've done some really unique experiences from the gathering of the Juggalos together to the Serato podcast, which was really unique too. And then even the mental health stuff. Like I don't know, there's more to come too, I know. So,
oh dude. Yeah. 100%, man. I also wanted to ask you, and this can snap us back into just like a good story. There was some point, maybe before New Year's, where I sent you a message on IG because you had posted a story of you like on I think it was one of the EDM like cruise ships that had like a giant like water slide or something. I never actually got to ask you what was going on there, but it just looked insane. So I was curious what that was.
Yeah. It was called It's the Ship, and it was over in Asia. It was actually, it took off in Singapore. And it's been cool. Like this point of my career, it's funny. I played Philly earlier this year, and I was like, this is like the 20th time I've played Philadelphia, which is an amazing blessing thing to have in my career, like knock on wood.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool. I'm starting to go over to Asia a lot more now, and I get to explore all of these countries. And when we talk about New Year's, I'll talk about that as well. But I've been just going to explore all of this. And the cool thing is I've done these rave cruises before too, but now I got to experience it over in Asia in these different places. And so yeah, that cruise was lit like they all are. I think there's something about this like floating casino of Vegas on the water. Like as soon as you get into like international waters, it's just like people don't even care like what is going on, and it gets super ratchet on those cruise ships. So.
What was the crowd like? Was it mostly an Asian crowd, or was it super international?
It was international, but mainly Asia international. And that's all the way to like India, Asia as well. There was a lot of people from like all of the Asias there. It seems to get that whole region of the world. There were some Aussies, of course. They always come up. Wherever there's a party, there's an Australian for sure. There was a handful of them. So they were up there as well. But it was mainly like an Asian demographic.
Do you notice, because I remember when trap like first had the big explosion that, you know, you were obviously spearheading, you know, back in the day, early 2010s era, there was a period where all of a sudden, like everyone in the trap scene first started getting booked in Asia. And I remember people talking about those shows of being like, yeah, it's really interesting. Like the music has just a different meaning. There's like it's less rooted in the American context of like the roots of actual trap music. And I think some people, it was good and bad for people for different reasons. But when you go different places now, like out of North America, do people react differently? Like how is the Flosstradamus sound taken in an international context in 2023, 24?
Yeah. I have a funny story I'll end this with, but I'll start off with when it initially started when we were going over there. I think just like, I mean, the EDM trap sound is based in just hip hop trap, and that music is so high energy and lit, and all of the descriptors for that. It just has like a power to it. I think for the Asia culture, and this is just me generalizing, I don't know, but if for let's say at the time, like a Waka Flocka song talking about like serving crack and stuff like that, it doesn't translate over there. Like I don't know if there's like much empathy over there. I don't know if they're serving crack in Asia, but I think the beats and the sound of what trap music is it still has the same energy over there. So for them, I think it was just like it maybe like felt more familiar. And again, I'm just speaking for them. I have no idea. But here in the States, we had the hip hop trap, which influenced the EDM sound.
Yeah.
Over there, the things before us were the Afrojacks and things like that. So when this genre came along, they were coming at it through the EDM side, I think.
Right.
And we were in the States were coming at it through the hip hop side. And so the common ground was both of those genres are like being mashed up. But like we came at them from different perspectives, but both like dynamics of people got to experience it in the same way.
Yeah.
Through different avenues.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that of course is true. And, you know, the big room house sound, I think, of course, it had such a huge impact on like the trap scene and where the EDM trap again, like where it went. You know, I'd say like the big room house stuff maybe had an even bigger impact than the hip hop after a while.
It's funny over in Asia, like the big room stuff never went away. I don't know if it's like a product of oversaturation of dance music in like the Western culture, but or maybe there's like a pride over there. Again, I don't know the culture, but like it feels like Hardwell and all those people that were like big here and then kind of faded out and big and up and down, like all of that big room stuff is still going off over there in ways. And I think that they just like hold on to something and like it still will stay. It doesn't like do the die out cycles that happen here. Like, oh, this is popping, this is popping, this is popping. I think that it can all exist over there, which is something I've noticed. It's like you can coexist together.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm so far out of my depth. So, you know, Asian listeners, please correct me if I'm wrong about any of this. But I feel like we're we're American, right? And so we have the American attitude of like, all the stars are American, all the trends are American, and we export our cool American trends to everybody else. And I think, you know, that's probably happening in Europe as well to some extent. That like, my point here is that my perception of a lot of dance music in Asia was that there were less homegrown stars than there were, say, in America. And I do feel like that's changing and has changed a lot in the last probably decade or so. Because now you're seeing, tons and tons of incredible Asian producers who are probably already like always there, but just getting a little bit more shine these days. But I do feel like for a while, for whatever reason, it was like the American and European imports were like the hot thing there rather than like homegrown dance music. And that's maybe why it was stuck around a little more too, is because like the trends at home weren't really like getting the shine, you know?
Yeah. And maybe part of that, a lot of those new artists that are coming out of those regions, it's like they got influenced by all of these like European and American artists now. And just like I was influenced by Kashmir in Chicago to like make house music or something. Like I had this thing when I was in my youth that I listened to. And then by the time I was like to the point of making music, then I took that influence and put it in my music. And it seems like that's happening in those regions. It's like a lot of this stuff was over there, seeding some of the culture, but then they took it and put their own twist on it. I actually heard in Thailand, there is a resurgence of like the Dutch house sound. Okay. And they're calling it tuk tuk, which is, or something like that. It's something like, because those little cars that they have, little like scooters, right? Those will be blasting like just like big room house and Dutch house all the time. So the young kids that don't know about the era of Afrojack and stuff like that, of the music that's being played on the tuk-tuks, are listening to the tuk-tuk music and like, this shit's fucking ridiculous. Like it was like the Sandstorm of our time, or the Better Off Alone of our time. Like we heard that and it was like corny when it first came out, But now that it's like it came back through culture again and got rinsed again, it actually became like ironically cool.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's what they're doing with a lot of this Dutch house sound over there. They actually are creating a subgenre called tuk tuk, which is these young kids that are like super young creating this new Dutch house sound based on what they hear in the tuk tuks. It's kind of cool.
That's so cool, man. Because then that's exciting to me, because then they're going to do something really unexpected with it. And they're going to, because they don't know the, like all the baggage that sound has, right? So they can approach it with fresh ears, fresh eyes, and just be like, hey, this shit is cool. And then they'll make their version of it, which will be totally unexpected. And I don't know, man, that's another reason why I love dance music. It's just like that could happen anytime.
Oh yeah. It's constantly like evolving on itself and like growing. And like, it's like I just love that, like, about dance music. It's always been that, like, ever since house music, and then house music turned into techno, and then techno turned into, like, blah, 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 blah from there. So it's cool. Well,
I'll put a pin in this because I want to come back to New Year's and to the rave cruise for a second. But you just said something that reminded me. I think this is maybe a good way to talk about your AI stuff for a minute. Because I was thinking about this earlier today, and maybe we can start here, is that I find what you're doing with AI, which again, we're about to talk about, very impressive, because there's like this entrepreneurial spirit that you have that we've talked about it before. It's something I've always been impressed with, but I wanted to talk to you about the idea of, and similar maybe to the kids in Thailand, like just jumping on Dutch house with sort of no prior knowledge. Like, I don't think I have that same thing of seeing something, knowing very little about it to start, and jumping in so deep to the point where now you have multiple companies, involved in this like music AI tech space. And, obviously these are things you've always been interested in, but like, I don't think I've ever actually asked you about the entrepreneurial side, which it goes beyond risk taking, and I think is more about, at least in my mind, like a curiosity, or maybe a defeating fear kind of thing. Like, have you thought about that for yourself? Like, what it is that allows you to sort of stroll into an area that you don't know that much about and become so established in it, I guess?
Well, thank you for that as well. And I think there's a lot of like things that we've talked about this in this already in this chat that are very similar to who I am. And first off, me, and I'm always like just trying to find cool new plugins and technology and things like that. So I'm like in the trenches, just digging all the time. And one of the things I also do, to what you said so kindly, is like, I'm a friend and I like to share things. Like, I'm not a gatekeeper in a sense.
Yeah.
So part of it is just my like sense of discovery. I want to find new genres. I want to find new plugins. I want to find new tools. I want to find things that can get me into that flow state we talked about so much easier. And then when I find this thing, I'm like, bro, you got to check this out. Holy shit. Like, look at this cool thing. And there's two parts of it. One is lightly self-serving. Like, I'm trying to figure out these things to make myself better, but I'm also trying to share these things because I have like this give a penny, take a penny mentality with a lot of this stuff. I could share this like AI voice thing with you, and you're like, well, you're into AI, check out this thing. And I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea. And I just do that in general with people, to the point of, I realize I'm so early on in these things, whether it's NFTs or these things, the AI stuff or whatever. I'm so early in these places that there's a lot of problems to be solved. And then I start to solve those problems. And the one thing that I haven't done that much in this space of solving people's problems is just trying to find ways to monetize it and turn it into businesses. And this is the first time I'm kind of like really kind of leaning into that in a way. And even the business side of what I'm doing isn't like just full on capitalism. Like, I want to make a huge bag. It's more of just like, okay, well, I know these skills. I've worked my butt off to figure these out, and I've solved these problems. Maybe we can turn these into products for the masses to be used. And then there can be like some sort of exchange of whatever resources in that sense. So that's kind of I think that's the way I approach it. If I'm just thinking out loud about how I approach
that actually makes sense to me. And I think, as you were saying it too, I realized there's plenty of examples of, say, a producer in our scene who happens to make a plugin that solves some issue they've been having. And then, maybe they'll put it up on, Gumroad or something and make it available to other producers, which is great, but it's still kind of a cottage industry kind of thing. I guess before we talk more about it, let's go ahead and like define these companies. So Rubin was kind of the overarching company that holds all of these other ideas, right?
Yeah. So in 2022, it was 22 is kind of when the ideas of what Rubin were started. So I heard a little bit of bubbling around the internet about this like voice cloning, and people were able to do voice cloning. And I started to just touch into it because I always wanted to do that. I wanted to have in my DJ sets, like, "What's up, Tampa?" in my set, but it's like Lil Jon's voice or something like that. Like I was like, well, how can I use this technology that's out there? And there were services out there you could like type text and it would do it, but it just didn't sound good. And I started hearing about the voice to voice stuff, and I stumbled across a 4chan board for My Little Pony. And in this 4chan board, all of these people were trying to clone the My Little Pony cartoon and redo the voices and then make their own versions of My Little Pony. And they were using this technology called Diff Singer, and Diff Singer was on GitHub. And GitHub is pretty much, for the music producers out there, it's like the SoundCloud of like tech and coding. And on there's a bunch of people that just like upload their code and like, I'm making this thing, and you can use it, you can try it out, you can iterate on it. It's almost like early Splice where someone would upload a session and then you could like download their session and iterate on it.
Right.
And so that's what GitHub is. And I found this Diff Singer thing on there. And then we ended up cloning a voice and showing it to Diplo. Our friend Boss, who's one of Diplo's producers and stuff, he actually cloned like a Justin Bieber voice, and then he remade a Justin Bieber song. And we pitched that to Diplo. He loved the idea. And then we just kind of snowballed with that. Like, what could we do with this Rubin company? Like, well, let's make it a services company. And what the services were, we translated Major Laser's song Lean On into multiple languages. All right, cool. Now you can do with this AI technology, you can now translate different languages. And then we're like, what else can we do? And so anyway, it went on from there. That was like the Rubin like services industry, and we can touch on more of that more.
Well, and let me just before we go any deeper too, for people, because I feel like you're very deep in this. I'm like a little deep in this, but I think probably some people listening don't have any context for this. So just very quickly, the voice cloning in general, can you very quickly just say what that is for anybody who doesn't know? Yeah.
So with what we're doing at Rubin with voice cloning is we take like 10 to 30 minutes of someone's voice, and then we make an AI model on that. And so there's technology out there that can analyze what that voice sounds like and pretty much make like a fingerprint of what that voice sounds like. And then if I, let's say, take Willy's voice, I make an AI model of it, then I can use my voice to then talk in Willy's voice, if that's what we want to do.
Right.
So that's kind of what it is. That's at least that's what Rubin was initially. It was a way to take other voices, make a fingerprint of them, and then now we can use that voice in multiple genres and different languages and things like that.
And that was part of the initial idea, or at least one of the first things you figured out you could do, right? Like talking about using like a clone Justin Bieber voice. You can make demos to like show this is what this person could sound like on this song, right? Like that's, I think I was reading something in what you sent me that was one of the early like ideas for the company.
Yeah, totally. So that's what it was. It was like initially for the stuff with Diplo, it's like, well, he had this song with a songwriter that had vocals on it, and that songwriter, doesn't sound that much like Justin Bieber, but he had to pitch this song to Justin Bieber's team, his A&Rs, and the people that get to choose that. And then so we put the clone of Justin Bieber's vocal fingerprint over that demo singer. And let's say there was 5 of those. Let's say we had 5 of those demos and we pitched all 5 of those to his team with the Justin Bieber fingerprint on it. They can get an idea of what that might sound like. And let's say they choose 2 of those. Then we have 3 other demos that are usually sitting on hard drives. There's so many demos that are being unused in the music industry. What we could then do is then now put Ariana Grande's voice over that, let's say. And then now we have 3 new demos we can pitch Ariana Grande's team. And so it's a way to actually take like these unused demos, show them to the A&Rs how this would sound as a final product or close enough to a final product, a really good rough draft, if you will. And then hopefully a lot of these demos can now be purchased and they can go out there. And the technology's gotten so good now that we can even release those AI demos, which is a whole other thing.
Yeah. I was playing around with, maybe there's a good way to talk about replay as well, because I was playing around with that this morning.
Awesome.
And man, it sounds so good. It's just crazy how good some of those voice models sound.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. And so, we'll segue into replay. So then what I realized is what I like to do, like I said earlier, is like just share what I've been working on. And so I realized a lot of the ways to do this voice cloning was just so hard. Like we're starting to get into early 2023 now. And the only ways you could do it is like, you either have to have a superpowered GPU, a superpowered PC, couldn't even do it on Mac. And then you had to do it through these cloud services like Google Colab, which is this weird thing. You have to know Python code, or there's a bunch of other cloud services. It was really hard to do that. There wasn't these like one-click solutions. So what I did is I started to kind of like mash together with my little bit of coding experience that I learned in school. Like I have a coding degree that I got back in 2004. So it's over a decade or 2 decades old. But I kind of mashed together these little websites through this free service called Hugging Face. And you can just it's pretty much a place you can host your AI code. And so I made that, and a lot of my friends were using that, but it just still wasn't like the best tool. And also us musicians were using our DAW, we're using Ableton or Fruity Loops or whatever. So like we wanted to make something you just drag back and forth between the two. So anyway, throughout all of last year, I started like looking around. I was on GitHub a bunch looking for different things. And I actually stumbled across the guys that made Replay 5 days into them making this app. And this is exactly what we wanted to do. And the funny thing is, this is the universe or whatever, which we can go even deeper on that. But that previous week, I was at Burning Man with my friend Luca, and I was staying with them. And I get back to LA and I got back into the Rubin side of things, and I was looking on GitHub and I find these guys that pretty much made this like desktop version of what I wanted to make. And I was like, I wonder who these people are. And I looked at them, and they were friends with my friend Luca, who I was just at Burning Man with the week prior. And I was like, that's weird. And so I texted Luca. I was like, do you know these people? He's like, oh, that was my roommate for years. And so he linked us up super randomly out of all the people on the internet and the people that are doing this like voice cloning stuff. These are like 1 degree of separation away from me. And so they linked us up. I talked to them. I was like, what are your goals? They were just like, we just made this. They saw the same thing I saw. There wasn't any solutions out there to do this on your desktop. And so we teamed up, and then we like actually refined what they had built and like kind of created this new version of what Replay is. And then the next iteration that we're about to launch it'll work on your DAW, it'll work in Ableton, it'll work like that. So it's like going to be in the environment that people are creating music. And one last nerd thing, and I'll stop ranting.
No.
The one thing I noticed with the AI image side of things, all of my graphic designer friends, I was like, you guys need to get into this AI image stuff. Get into this. And everyone was avoiding it. They're so scared of it. They're afraid. I was like, try Midjourney, try these tools. Midjourney was hard. You had to be in into Discord, and you had to figure out it was like really hard for just the graphic designer to participate in AI images. And the thing that changed for everyone is as soon as they added AI to Photoshop, all of my designer friends that use Illustrator, Photoshop, any of the Adobe products that now have AI, they love it. It's just made their workflow so much faster. And that's what we're trying to do with Replay. We're trying to take all of those tools, put them in the environment where everyone is, into Ableton or whatever, and then they can use these AI tools into their creative process.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much Replay.
I mean, that's amazing, man. And I want to kind of, in the same way that we broke down voice cloning a second ago, can you, for somebody who, hasn't played with any of these tools, hasn't approached it for whatever reason yet, can you give just a couple sort of basic examples of what a producer can do with Replay in a DAW?
Yeah. The weird use of it, I mean, there's so many wild uses of it, but the one weird use, which is kind of cool, is you can actually clone instruments. So you can even use a flute or a saxophone or things like that. And you can even whistle your melody or hum your melody, and it'll actually turn it into that instrument, which is kind of cool. I cloned a bunch of dubstep growls and things like that just to try. I had exported a bunch of sounds out of Serum just to see if I could then control it with my voice, and you get really cool results. And I was talking to my friend the other day about where AI is now with music, and we'll talk into more of the cool new tools that are out there. But they were a little upset at the quality of what it sounds like right now. But I had brought up I remember when Daft Punk put out a bunch of their stuff, they were making that music on these like really low quality samplers and stuff, but it actually gave this cool grit to it. Like Music Sounds Better With You by Stardust has like a really cool grit on the guitar, the Shaka Khan guitar, but that's because of like the poor quality of the sample at that time. And I think that's the same with like what this stuff is. Like it's in this weird state where it has like this weird tinge to it. And let me go back to finishing your question.
Yeah.
The cool thing with what Replay does is if I have a male voice, my voice is very raspy and deep, but let's say I'm working on like a house song and I want to add like more of a female vocal or like I have this idea of what I want. I can even sing that into Replay and I can even choose a female vocal model. And now I will have a female vocal feature on my song. Even if that's just little backup vocals, with Replay, you can actually do that. You can actually convert male to female and it doesn't sound like chipmunk transposition that normal Ableton stuff does. And then, of course, there's so many other cool uses of what this is. Like we have stem separation built into it as well. So let's say you find a sample and you need just the vocal from it. You can actually remove that and then you can change that to another vocal. There's so many other like cool little tools, which I love, like putting this out there that people are going to do really cool new things with it. They're going to create new genres. And just like when Auto-Tune came out, people kind of hated on it. It sounded robotic, but then like everyone uses it on everything now. Even bands are using Auto-Tune. So I feel like that can be what Replay is in the future. It's just, it needs to get in the right hands for people using this tool that we've created creatively.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And the stem separation, like in the DAW, I think is a huge thing too. That's something very few people are doing right now. And I think that'll save so much time and make creativity so much faster. And maybe that, like the idea of we don't even know what people are going to do with it yet, the possibilities are endless kind of thing. Maybe that's a good way to talk about weights and the community aspect.
Yeah. And so what weights is, again, there was another problem we realized is a lot of this AI voice cloning stuff was just scattered all over the internet. It was on random Discord forums. There'd be people on one Discord forum that's a Spanish speaking one that make a bunch of Spanish speaking models and just random other models. And then there's another one that has certain other models. Plus some of these Discords were getting taken down by the Recording Association of America. It just was a lot of like, just everything was falling all over the place. And we realized there wasn't any website that just had all of these models curated. And so what we did is we pretty much became the Napster of AI voice cloning. And we took all of these models and we put them into a centralized hub, just like Napster did back in the day. Take all of these MP3s and put them in a centralized hub that anyone can access it.
Yeah.
And that's what we did with Weights. And one of the things, though, that we're learning from Napster and why we did part of what Weights is we have this hub where you can get all of the AI voice cloning needs met. Whatever model you want, whatever style, you can get that. But we're adding a new feature to this where there will be like exclusive, like official models that you can get. So approved through us, through the artist, you can actually get these official models through Weights that are actually ones you can use in our app Replay or on our website on Weights, which is just like a hub for all of the AI models. So,
yeah. Which, I mean, that's bringing a bit of the ethical angle in too, which I wanted to ask you about too, because it is such a Wild West time, which I think is always incredible for creativity and exciting. But then also it's good to see. And there's, I think you and a few other people really looking at, taking care of the artists in all of this. And I don't know, man, anything you want to say about that, I'd love to hear, because I think it's nice that anyone is paying attention to it this time around, because I did not feel like they were in past like explosions of technology. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that we've learned from our past as part of it, but the cool thing is that there's a lot easier ways to track everything now. So even on Weights, we have tracking in it that we built this like audio, for lack of a better term, there's a QR code that plays every 10th of a second. Pretty much there's an audio QR code on anything generated at Weights. And what that'll do is it can track everything from royalties. Let's say you have ASCAP, BMI, things like that. It can say who generated it. It can say what model was used. It can say what pitch was used in the model. So there's a lot of different things that can now be tracked. And like, I think that's one of the cool things about this era is like, we can actually track every little bit of this, and then it can go back to the original source. We're all trying to figure this out right now, because currently today, while I'm talking to you, there is no law in place for AI voice cloning. There is nothing in there. There's laws in place for sampling. Like if I go sample the new Drake record and make it and put it out, I can't really put that out. I'll put it out, but get cease and desist and takedowns and all of that. But if I go use the AI voice model of Drake, and I make a song, and I don't say it's Drake, because if I start saying it's Drake, it's going to be his likeness and his, all of his IP that's there. But if I put out a song that sounds just like Drake today on a Flosstradamus song, it is fully legal for me to do that if I don't use any of his likeness or his branding. So we're going to figure out a lot of this, and I'm working with a bunch of people. The cool thing is the film industry has been doing this for a while. They cloned James Earl Jones' voice. They've been doing a lot of things where they've like set practices and standards in what AI voice cloning is. And I'm working with this company called Morpheme.ai, and they do a lot of voice cloning, and they've been doing it for 4 years in the AI voice acting space.
Right.
And so we're trying to bring over those people and those lawyers into our fold, and like, let's try to figure out some new standards with this. And I think, me personally, I actually see this. I don't think it's going to be such a black and white future with this. I think there's going to be artists who are fully open to using their voice AI. Like, go use my voice, do whatever you want with it. Then there's going to be the artists like, don't even touch my likeness. I don't want that. And then there's going to be estates of dead artists that want to make money. There's going to be so many different angles from what this can be. I don't think there's going to be a single solution. And that's what I'm trying to build in this space. Like, I'm trying to learn with this space and work with the artist and try to build something that's like, if you choose path A and someone else chooses path B and C, like, there's different tiers of how this can be monetized, how it can be distributed, how it can be tracked. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with all of this. Like, try to hit different angles of what it is and support what the creator wants with their voice is the main thing.
Dude, it's just giving artists the choice, right? I think that's sort of the fundamental part of this that is very needed. While you were saying that, talking about like some artists want to like, yeah, do whatever with my voice, I thought of, because you had sent me that deck with Smokey Robinson in it. Mm-hmm. And he seems like, I'd love for you to tell the story of like how you guys worked with Smokey Robinson, but he really does seem like somebody who is just like, oh yeah, do whatever. It's like, he seems very happy that anyone is interested and anyone wants to do anything. I saw, Wookiee sampled him for one of Wookiee's most recent records. I forget which one. And they got Smokey Robinson to make a little video of him like listening to the Wookiee remix. And it was just one of those funny things. Like, it's a little like stilted because he's like old and kind of awkward and was just like, what is this? But he was just like, oh, this is very nice. And he's like, I encourage everyone to make remixes of my voice. It's just like a fun. He just seems like a guy who's like down for whatever. It seemed like a cool link up.
That's awesome. And I think that's the thing with a lot of this AI rights stuff, or just rights in general. Like, some artists are cool with whatever, like reinterpret their stuff, do it over, like, who knows? Like, some artists even release the stems and stuff to their music. Like, there isn't just one cookie cutter lane for what it means to be an artist and with all of this. And I'm afraid with once all of these laws come in and clamp down things, and that's why I'm trying to be like working with the lawmakers in this space. But I'm afraid that it's going to clamp down so much that someone who is open as Smokey Robinson he'll be hindered by this when he's fully open and he's publicly open about it. And so hopefully we can like find a way that there's like different ways to cut this cake.
Yeah.
To your question, how we got working with him, we're actually working with another deceased artist estate, but the people that represent that estate represent Smokey Robinson's estate as well. And he's actually currently working on a whole new album with a bunch of modern producers. So again, he's just forward thinking. He's trying to do cool new things. And the one thing sadly about his voice, it doesn't sound like Smokey Robinson that made him as popular as we know. If he sings now, it's, his voice is weathered. He's old. So what we're doing is actually cloning his voice from the era that he was peak at with a lot of the hits that he has. And with these new producers, we're actually making brand new songs with Smokey Robinson's vocal fingerprint, even though he is the one who's performing on top of it. So he's singing these songs himself. And now we're actually taking his original vocal fingerprint, like I was mentioning before, and overlaying it over his current voice. And now it sounds like the Smokey Robinson of yesteryear, which is kind of cool.
That's interesting. Is there a way to tune it? Because I mean, that almost sounds like the same idea behind auto-tune. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Is there a way to tune it so it's like you're getting some of his live performance and some of the AI voice print?
Yeah, you could do both. Yeah, you could blend between the two. And speaking of blending in Replay as well, our app, we have ways you can blend multiple models. So you could actually mix Smokey Robinson with Notorious B.I.G. and create like a whole new model. But you can also blend, like you said, his old voice with his new voice and kind of find a new middle ground. I would even think it'd be cool, and I'm not part of the production process of the music, but I want to pitch to them a way to that we could have Smokey Robinson 2024 do a duet with Smokey Robinson 1964 or whatever, like there can be a way to like actually do the back and forth between the two, which would be kind of cool.
That's interesting too. Have you seen the Smokey Robinson Hanukkah video, by the way?
No.
He was on, it's like my favorite video of the last few years. He's on Cameo, and someone like bought a cameo from him to, I think it was like wishing their sister happy Hanukkah or something like that. And he like, it's like the classic like old person. He's like reading off the script or whatever. And he's like, hello, your friend Deborah wanted to let you know that, well, she says that you're a big fan of my music and that you used to live in Detroit, like near where I used to live. And he goes on this like kind of rambling thing. And then the very end of it, he's like, oh, and also she wanted me to wish you a happy Chanukah. I don't know what Chanukah is, but happy Chanukah. Then he just signs off.
That's amazing.
It's so good. And he's like, he's so happy and positive throughout. It's just like one of those, it just makes me happy, man. I'll send it to you. It's just like
I love it.
His whole life, everything he's done, never learned about Hanukkah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so good. Oh man,
Smokey Robinson.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Oh man,
wow.
Well, dude, is there anything else we should say? And for anybody listening who wants more information about the AI stuff, we'll put all the links in the description of this. Tell everybody where to go. Is there any other detail, nuance that we missed about what you're doing with it, or stuff you're working on now that people should look out for?
Yeah. So lastly, I'll talk about this other company I've been working with for a little over a year. When I first met up with them, they weren't called Suno, but now they're called Suno. And they are probably at the forefront of what the future of AI music will be. And it's so amazing. So you can put lyrics in, you can type your own lyrics and put it in there and generate a full song with lyrics in any genre you choose. So you could say a dubstep song about a podcast with Willy Joy. And you can even just put it in as a prompt like that.
Right.
And it'll create a full dubstep song, like talking about this stuff. But you can also put your own lyrics in, and it'll actually write a song around your lyrics, which is really cool. And there's a lot of cool ways to hack this too. You can even put just like punctuation in, and it'll create instrumentals, or you can even like ask it to do like a vocal version. There's like a lot of cool ways to use this technology. And for any of the listeners that ever use any of the image generation AI, it's kind of like the early forms of that. And I think when you use those early ones, you might type in whatever, like a bird in the forest, and it takes like 6 different times to get it to look like what you imagined it to be. That's the same with this, the music generation. It's still at its early primitive stages. It still sounds a little like muffly and distorted.
Yeah.
But again, this is the worst the technology will ever be is today. And for the people that can use this to their advantage, I think it'll like actually set them ahead of the pack. And I even just like want to give like a suggestion. Like if let's say you make disco house or something, like what a lot of the disco house or the French house is they sample old disco records. So what I would do if I were to make like a disco house song back in the day, I would go to the record shop, I'd dig through a bunch of disco songs, I'd listen to 12 songs on an EP, maybe find one, then I'll take that one and sample it. I feel like that's a lot of what this is now. Like if I want, I can go into Suno and say a disco song about a podcast with Willy Joy, and generate 12 different ones. Like I was looking through a record, and maybe I have one in there that has a really cool sample in it. And it's almost like digging for samples, but curated to the subject matter you want. And another cool thing with things like replay, what we do with Suno is we actually can take that thing that was generated from Suno, put it into replay, and now we can stem separate it. So we can take just the vocals out. And then let's say I make a dubstep song, I can take that vocal from Suno and put it in as is, or I could put another one of the replay vocals on top of it. I could put like a Flodan model on top of that thing I generated. And now I have like a Flodan sounding vocal on my demo that I created with lyrics that I created myself. So again, to kind of wrap all of this up, I think there's a lot of cool uses of this technology keeping us in that flow state. It's just been super inspiring for me, and it's just like keeping me cranking out music. I always hit a wall when it came to lyrics and it came to vocals, and now I have a tool that can generate all these cool little vocals and samples for me that are specifically curated for me on what I'm asking it. So
yeah. That's so cool, man. And it's one of those things where hearing you talk about it, I mean, I gets me stoked, but it also makes me realize that pretty soon, probably somebody's going to use these tools, maybe the tools that you're making, to really do something crazy. And it's like, it's 100% guarantee that someone is going to do something that is going to sort of change the paradigm. And it's just a question of who and when. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with like the Thai Tuk Tuk Dutch house stuff too, where it's just like, I couldn't have predicted that, but that sounds great. I want to hear that, you know? Yeah.
And taking it to that thing, like the reason why the Thai Tuk Tuk stuff landed is culture got to a point where it was in that Tuk Tuk, and then the kids that were in that place like borrowed from that culture and iterated on it. Yeah. And I think that's a similar thing with this. Like it's all of this is getting to a spearhead, to a spot where it's like accessible, and maybe some person will take that and just do something really unique with it and create a genre of music. I'm excited to hear what like AI house is or something like that. There's going to be subgenres made with these tools now, just like how Autotune kind of created a sound. And like I said earlier, I'm excited to see what that is. And for me, one thing I like to do with a lot of these things, like even with this EDM trap or whatever, is like, I love to be able to like have my little ripple in what culture is. And the cool thing with these tools, I'm trying to do that with this. Like I'm creating this tool that will hopefully ripple out into culture. Yeah. And then that will affect culture even deeper. Yeah.
Well, and it's cool that you can kind of be on both sides of it. Like I was talking to someone, this is random, but I was talking to someone the other day who works at SiriusXM, but they work on sort of the internal, not public facing side of Sirius. So, you know, they're like collecting and licensing and like all of these record label catalogs that then all of their channels will use to broadcast out and curate, you know, channels and programs for people. And he was sort of saying, he was like, I love this because I'm like, me and my department were like the table legs that the rest of the company stands on, that then people, you know, build out their whole home standing on top of, basically. And for you now, I mean, it's kind of, you know, you've been both at this point, which is kind of a cool perspective.
Yeah, I think that I've, at this point of my career, whatever, the dude jumping around on stage is fun and all, but I'm in my early 40s. It's at some point, it's not going to sustain for who I am with my body and my age and all of that, that I'm okay to move from literally standing on the table to being the table legs. Right. I think that's so funny. To tie the metaphor back.
How did I not see that coming?
I was on top of the EDM table, but I'm coming back down to the legs, and I'm okay with that. Like, there's a couple of these young up and coming kids that are like crushing it here in LA and in San Diego and stuff. And they hit me up the other day, and they're using a lot of these tools that I'm doing, and they're crushing it, and they're showing me the stuff that they're doing with this. And they even talked to me about my influence as an EDM trap artist into their career. And it's just so cool to hear that stuff. And that, as many streams as I get or Instagram likes or whatever, those single person to person text messages that I get or things like that, those mean the world to me. And that's kind of why I do this stuff. And that's why I build these tools. And that's that ripple I've caused to like to hopefully affect culture. Seeing them win and seeing them use these tools and seeing them do all these crazy things is just so amazing that I had like a little teeny bit of a seed in what they do. And like, I don't know. I stand back and watch that and just love it. It's such a cool thing.
I mean, that's real legacy, right? Like outside, I go back and forth all the time if I think legacy even matters. But if it does, I think that's the real legacy that anyone should aspire to. Is not like my name will be remembered or like people will be thinking about me after I'm gone, but that you had an effect on the way things went, and that the way things go in the future will be in some way related to a thing you did back then. Like to me, that's sort of, I don't know. I'm not saying it eloquently, but that's sort of the only thing that makes sense to me as far as legacy.
And sadly, a lot of people that become these legacy artists, a lot of them don't get to experience that in their lifetime. Like they pass away and then their legacy like lives on, which is great. But I'm blessed that I get to like at least experience the tangibility of what that legacy might be doing in a way. So
yeah, 100%, man. Well, is there anything about the current state of Flosstradamus that we should talk about? Like, I know you're working on all of this in tandem, like it's all happening at the same time. What's going on with Floss and with music and tours and all that?
And yeah, so speaking of legacy, that's kind of like the motive of 2023 and 24 of what Floss is. And it's funny, I've been leaning heavy on the legacy side, but also the future side. Like I'm one of my goals is to make this whole Flosstradamus project like an AI entity, but at the same time, I'm doing a lot of this legacy stuff. So we're doing a tour with Yellow Claw, like doing a full on like Trap Legends tour together. That's starting in May, so that'll be in like the spring. And we have a bunch of dates lined up at bigger venues, and it's going to be cool. We're taking it back to kind of that old school trap sound that started a lot of this stuff, and it's kind of cool for the both of us. We get to just explore that era. I think for the longest time, at least I know my side of this, I kept trying to keep up with the Joneses and what EDM and trap were, and my sound might have went a little more dubstep for a while, like more hybrid trap or whatever. But it's cool going back to this old stuff and just like kind of going back to the primitive, what it felt like to do a lot of this and like hear those songs and how minimal they were. So that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah.
That's
oh no, the only thing I was going to say is like hearing you talk about it. I've talked to a couple of the like very early dubstep people lately, and it's funny how many parallels there are. Because if you go back and you listen to like very early trap Flosstradamus songs, like you said, very minimal, not super aggressive, and just very, very groovy, very vibey, very hip hop influenced. And it's sort of the same with the very early dubstep stuff. Like you go back and you listen to that. Like do you know Scuba? He's like one of the very, very, very early dubstep guys. He runs Hot Flush, which was like one of the first labels to put out some big dubstep records back in the day. But I was talking to him and I went back and listened to his catalog, and I was like, I hope you don't get offended by me saying this, but like all of your early songs, all of this like really influential dubstep, it's so simple. I couldn't believe how simple it was. And he was like, no, that's exactly right. Yeah. He was like, there was very little going on. That's kind of why it was cool,
It seems like a lot of genres that get birthed, they always are at their simplest form early on. Like going back to like, I don't know, like who's a new hot artist, like Hamdi or something. Like the sound that he has, bro, there's like, I don't even think there's buildups to his songs, and the drops are very simple and very like just the choices are well executed. I think that was with everything. Early house music was super minimal. Like there's so many of these things that start out very, very minimal. And so I would just say randomly to the people that are out here making music, who are listening to this, like the young producers and stuff, like, yeah, you might want to be like the biggest sound designer and make the most maximal music. And if that's what influences you, make that, go ahead. But it's okay if you're still starting out. You don't have to be like the most next level sound design producer. Be okay with your skill set where it's at, because the guys that made house initially were just like figuring out how to do it, and they had like a minimal skill set. The people that do all of these genres, even the Floss shit, we didn't know what we were doing. We were sampling like hardstyle records, and like sound design didn't even matter. So I don't know. I just wanted to kind of give a little like heads up to those younger producers that might feel guilty. watching the tutorials on YouTube, not knowing how to run Serum or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
go find a cool sample and chop it up, and that's as simple as you need.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's all about just doing what resonates with you and what you find interesting and cool. If going down a YouTube wormhole and learning every inch of sound design is fun for you, then you should do as much of that as possible and become the expert at that. But if it's, if it feels like pulling teeth and you're like, this isn't fun, this isn't what I wanted out of this experience, there are other options. And,
Thank you.
A lot of those we still talk about to this day, like it's all equal value. It's just what you do with it.
Shout out Willy for making my point more eloquent.
I think you said it very well.
That was good.
Yeah. But that'll be fun, man. That tour will be fun.
Yeah. That's it. And then also on the same tip of legacy and throwback. So I have another song with Lil Jon coming out too, which is kind of cool. It's called I Don't Give a Fuck. And it's cool. It feels like the old trap era. It feels just like old fun dance music. It's not super sound designy. It's not next level. It's a festival banger, but that's the next single I'm putting out here soon. And yeah, that's kind of where Floss is. It's like, do things that acknowledge the past, but then also be like super forward thinking with all this AI stuff that I'm doing. And yeah, my goal is to have definitely by the end of the year, a form of AI music that's out there, as well as a way that fans can actually generate AI versions of what Floss is. So you can actually go and create your own version of a Floss record through the AI tools that we're working with. So,
oh man, that's a fun idea.
You get to have your hand in the process. It's funny, actually, I'm just thinking of this right now, which is weird, but a lot of times when you put music out to the world, the SoundCloud comments and things like that, there's so many people that are like talking shit. Of course, there's positive reviews, there's things like that. And I remember Kanye had a thing a while ago. He was like, if you can do it better, do it, or something like that, to the people that were talking shit on his. Well, the cool thing is, actually, I think with this AI tech and stuff, and hopefully with the stuff that I'm building right now, is you might not like the single I put out, but the cool thing is with these AI tools, you can actually do it better. You don't have to spend your time sitting in the comments. You can actually use these tools, even if you don't know how to make music, and make a better, quote unquote, better version that fits you and what you think the song should be, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Remix, it's just another form of remixing in a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, that's, for any artist. I talk about this idea all the time on the podcast, but it's, songwriting, sound design, tempo, style, all of that is fine. But what, at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters for me, for artists I fall in love with, is like, I want to be able to see their perspective. I want like a point of view. I want to see through their eyes how they see the world or how they think music should sound, that kind of thing. For me, that at the end of the day, if I think about all the artists I love, that's really the unifying thing, and I think that's what you're talking about. It's just like, it's a cool idea that, maybe anybody could do that now.
When people are making music, they're almost translating what they understand music to be, and they're putting it out there in not necessarily words. If there's lyrics, there's words, but they're actually putting it out there in a way that's like, this is my interpretation of what I think is good, what I like. They're expressing themselves from what they're influenced from. And they might be influenced from X, Y, and Z, but they're able to like take that, reinterpret it, and then put it out there and almost like give the world a version of what their taste is, their experience is, which is kind of cool. And it's not done in the form of words, because their experience is so psychedelic, it's so unique that you can't really put it into words for someone else to understand. You have to show through example.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I wanted to maybe wrap up just by sort of quickly doing a couple there's just been a lot of changes lately in our world, like just little things, but I feel like some of them tie into some of these ideas we've been talking about. So we don't have to like go deep on any of this, but I just wanted to throw a couple at you to see what you thought. Talking about different eras, different mindsets, different perspectives throughout the years. I don't know if do you see this like Pitchfork thing where, so Pitchfork, this is about a week ago, got a long time ago, years ago, Pitchfork got acquired by Condé Nast, like the big magazine, like super corporation. This was a while back. And now about a week ago, They were put directly under GQ, which Condé Nast also owns. And in that, most of the staff was laid off. So it's kind of like Pitchfork got gutted. And like Pooja, who I think, Pooja, right? Who was like, from back in the day and was the editor-in-chief there. She got laid off and a whole bunch of people. And it's like, Pitchfork still exists currently, but we all know how this goes. Like, it's kind of the death knell, which, for what we do, man, Pitchfork's such a, whether you feel, everybody's got an opinion how they feel about Pitchfork, but it was always there, so I don't know. It was a crazy thing for me to see it go in the way of a lot of other companies in this era.
Dude, it sucks to hear that, but as much as this is a weird perspective on it, like everything in capitalism has that cycle. Like, just go to Marshall's and you'll see what happens to companies that we used to love that influenced our culture. Yeah. Like Echo is at Marshall's now. But at one point that was like the shit I wore to drum and bass clubs. And so, so Pitchfork is the Echo. No, I'm sorry. That's a weird comparison.
I kind of love it though.
it's the shady wear of the music industry.
Because it speaks that comparison. It is a joke, but it speaks to, I think, something where it's like Echo for a while was sort of like, it was the brand that only a certain demographic wore. If you wore it, you were kind of in this secret little group, and you all kind of knew what it meant. But there was no way Echo could survive in that form forever.
Yeah. And I think that's just kind of what happens in a weird way. As sad as it is, and I hate hearing people losing their jobs, and we can even touch on that a little bit, but it's just the evolution of things and culture. Like genres will come and go, influences will come and go. Pitchfork had a huge influence on me, on Chicago, on the music culture. There's so much that had. But I think even after Pitchfork became Hype Machine, and then after Hype Machine became blah, 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 like it's like there was all these things that were successors of that just keep going. So as sad as this is, I just think that's just what happens with capitalism. And the people that started Pitchfork, I'm sure, got to the point where they didn't have the passion that they had initially in it. And money seems better than their scale of money to passion probably is like, well, I have a family, I have these things I'm going to sell to this company. And then when that gets sold to that company doesn't value it as much as the person who started it because they don't have those roots in the trenches. And then they can just flip it and sell it to GQ, and it just goes from there. So it's just the evolution of how things are.
Yeah, it is, man. I mean, this is, I try not to go into too many capitalism rants, but I certainly have some feelings about that too. But
I'm down to go if you want to. Let's change. It's 2024. Let's change the energy of what back-to-back podcast is. Let's
it just becomes a communist podcast.
Yeah, yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm not that far away from it. But no, I think the other part of the Pitchfork thing, this is the last thing I'll say about it, is that from knowing Pooja and knowing a few other people who have written there over the years, and seeing some of what people have written after these layoffs and all that, it was also kind of the last or one of the last places for like real in-depth music journalism. Like there's really very few left, And obviously we all know.
Stone's gone.
Yeah, I mean, journalism's in trouble in general. In some ways, I'm like, man, is this actually the end of like deep thinking, critical thinking in the way that we know it about music? It's a troubling idea. I'm sure there's Substack and there's Patreon. There's many other ways that, writers and journalists can get their ideas out there. But at the same time, to me, it is troubling because I'm like, whether you think, music criticism as an art form, whatever you think the value of that art form is, it seems weird and maybe wrong to me that it wouldn't exist at all,
It could be getting there, man. Like it's deep journalism is getting replaced by deep fakes in a weird way. Like, and what I mean by that is just like there's these algorithms are pushing things to the top that are clickbait. They're like, I said Rolling Stone a minute ago, but Rolling Stone turned into that. It turned into it started out as music journalism. That was like the biggest cultural influence for music journalism when it started, to becoming this like clickbait weird. I don't even know what it is now, but sometimes I'll like follow a link that takes me there. I'm like, what happened to Rolling Stone? Like what? But I think that that's what it is. And deep journalism to deep fakes. Like we're in this era where algorithms are creating this stuff that I don't know if a lot of people want. I don't know if people want this like saccharine sugar version of what things are. I think they'll click on it. They'll like experience it to feel that dopamine high, but they don't even go past the headline. Like after all the 50 ads that come up, there's like some sort of body of the subject that no one even cares about. They just see the headline. And I feel sadly that's like what's happening with all of journalism, because the television news is trying to keep up with that clickbait culture. And so they're going to do things that like stimulate that part of the human brain. And it's just this constant weird battle. And it's sad, but I don't know what can bring that back, but there's always pendulum shifts in culture. So maybe what will happen is it will swing back fully, and there will be like the vinyl revolution of journalism. And I don't know.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I think it's, I guess if I'm putting my real opinion out, I think it's going to get worse before it can get any better. And I will say all of those issues you just mentioned, I would blame capitalism for 100% of them as well. But
yeah, man.
But it's just a weird. So let's jump off of the Pitchfork thing. This is the last thing I wanted to bring up, to the sort of death of Pioneer. Did you see this? Where it's like turning into AlphaTheta now? Dude,
which I don't know. I haven't looked at the branding behind that, but I'm just like, I heard all of this through the grapevine. I'm actually going to NAM this week.
Oh, nice.
I'm speaking at NAM on some AI panels, but I'm meeting up with the Serato boys and seeing what's up with that, because what does this mean? I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. My instinct is that it's not good for Serato, but we'll see.
Yeah. My optimistic outlook, which I don't know, is I would hope, me personally, fuck Rekordbox. It's like the Android to the iPhone or whatever.
100%.
But Serato's music organization is so much better. Personal opinion. I would love there could be an option in Serato to export to a USB for Rekordbox or to play on CDJs. I'm hoping optimistically, when I saw the merger happen, 3 years ago or whatever it was, when they initially merged, my optimistic outlook was like, oh my God, there's a way that this can happen. Right. Like there can be all of the best of both worlds. I always think that way. Like, I remember when Serato first came out, it was that same thinking. I was like, oh my God, all these scratch routines that I had to have all these random records for, I can do in one thing. Right. And then fast forward, Paris Hilton's a DJ. So like, I don't know what's going to happen to this merger, because I came at it so optimistically, but I'm just like, oh, like the corporations, the capitalism, all of these things that we are hating on in this chat, I think are going to ruin this. They're going to Tommy Boy biscuit the fucking what was built before them. So
yeah. And for anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, AlphaTheta is the overarching company that now owns Pioneer, Serato, a bunch of other stuff as well. But did you see? I mean, they're actually like, there's not going to be Pioneer CDJs anymore. It's going to be AlphaTheta hardware or what, they haven't named it yet, but they're saying like all new equipment is going to be AlphaTheta equipment.
Bro, that's okay. So that's what I heard when I'm not ADD looking it up during the chat, but I heard this by so many people, and they were like, like everyone's like making noise around it, but I haven't done the full in-depth look. So the boomer in me says, keep it the way it was. Like it needs to have a Serato and a Pioneer logo. I've known only Pioneer my whole life. So the boomer in me wants me to like be upset at that. But as we talked about with all of this stuff, the kids and the tuk-tuks finding the music, there's going to be a generation behind us that their first CDJ is an AlphaTheta CDJ, and Pioneer doesn't even matter to them. Yeah. And so for that, I'm excited to see what that brings. I'm just hoping that the technology gets improved and they find a way to find the best of both worlds and create whatever that is.
Yeah, me too. No, and I had the same thought. Like, I don't really the brand of pioneer, to be honest, I don't care that much. Like it's, yeah, of course I've been using it my whole career too, but I don't care if it changes names. That doesn't bother me. It's more about, you know, are they going to look out for the culture that's behind it? And I don't know, man. I guess we'll see. The fact that Serato's in the mix gives me a little hope, like you, because I know how much they care. And I know a lot of those guys personally, and I see how hard they work and how much input they take from the community and all of that. But capitalism, man, we'll see. It's a strong force.
Yeah, it is, man. Money ruins everything, man. Like in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like I might have said this to you before, but I was watching and this isn't fully true, but it's the way I viewed it when I was watching the Woodstock documentary about Woodstock 99 or whatever, the Limp Bizkit one, and about how that was so much more different than what at least the way it was portrayed in the documentary. I wasn't at the original Woodstock. I'm sure there's problems there, but it seemed like it was peace and love and it's commune and you can eat my food, almost like a Burning Man type energy. And then when it went to Woodstock 99, it's like capitalism, like buy these expensive waters, and it just got ruined. And it seems like that the energy that the people that created it, again, from the documentary, I'm using my only views of that, is in the 99 one, they were like, oh, we have this amazing brand. Let's just capitalize on it and like just use the brand. But the passion that they had when they did the one back in the 60s wasn't the same as when they approached it in the 90s. Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping doesn't happen with this as well. I hope that this AlphaTheta thing doesn't ruin all these other people had built, the passion that they had built. So
yeah, no, 100%, man. It's a good analogy. It's the perfect analogy because it's sort of people getting excited about a culture or a legacy for the wrong reasons or reasons they don't fully understand. And I mean, that's what, you know, over and over we see that. It's just sort of it's unavoidable in the system we live in. So yeah, I hope it doesn't happen either, man, but you know what? Even if it does, here's what I'll say. Even if it does, as DJs, that would suck for us for a while. But to maybe wrap this up on a more positive note, maybe that leaves the door open for something else to come in. Because it's been such a monopoly for so long. And like you said, you know, I hate Record Box too. And I know a lot of people do, but it's just what you had to use. So if they screw this up, if they fumble it, then hopefully somebody else can come along and fill the need for DJs because the need's still going to be there.
I think that's always what happens with culture in general. Like there's someone else comes in and tries to approach it with a different angle. And I'm excited to see what that is too. I don't know what it'll be. Maybe they'll be the ones that do it. Maybe they won't fumble it, but there's always going to be like young up and coming people that can change that wave.
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, dude, I love you, man. I love talking to you. I feel like I should wrap it up here unless we go for, you know, another 4 hours. What are you doing the rest of the day? What you got going on?
I mean, I saved most of this for this. I have a call in an hour for the AI stuff. The funny thing is, I was actually in the middle of editing pieces of your podcast. I was going to do a voice clone of you for this podcast and make you sing "Hello" by Adele. So I was like starting to train the model today, and like it was just hard to like edit up. I took pieces of your podcast to do it, and it was just hard to edit enough audio to have like 20 minutes of audio for the data set. But I will do that eventually. You're going to get a troll call. Wait. But the reason I brought that up is not using replay or anything, but eventually, and I think there actually are tools now where you can do that. You can edit your podcast like real time. You can change words with just text and stuff like that. So it's cool that you can do that there's like tools out there to make it so.
Yeah. There's already, I don't use them myself because I'm a little too much of a control freak, but there's tools where you can, they'll go through and like take out breaths and take out silences to make the whole thing more compact. But, you know, with some kind of like model behind it, like it's not just a mechanical thing that it sounds great. Like you can't even tell people are using it. It's wild, man.
Yeah, man. We're in a really cool era for a lot of this stuff. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's to come.
Dude, me too, man. And you're behind some of it too. So that's, I don't know. I'm glad you are, man, because I feel like, I don't know. You've been behind some very cool and impactful movements in the scene thus far.
Thank you,
it's cool that you're still doing it and still excited about doing it, man.
Yeah, man. My energy might not be into like making like the biggest, craziest drops and all of that, but like it's that passion that I had for that is still here the exact same. I'm on my computer the exact same amount of time I was back in 2012 doing the CDM trap shit. It's just maybe my skill set is being focused somewhere else. And yeah, I love that.
But still for the same culture, for the same, general ideas, working with a lot of the same people, the same community. I mean, that's what it is, man. That's what longevity is. Like, I don't know. We can never predict our path, but just trying to stay on it. You said this to me a long time ago. It's just like riding the waves of it all. That's the whole secret. If there is a secret to success and to longevity, that's all it is. It's just like, try to stay up, try to not get sucked under it.
Yeah, man. Just you gotta float, man. There's a lot of waves. You gotta float. I don't know. That's all I'm trying to do. So
yeah. I love it, man. I'm so excited to see what you're going to do with all the new companies, all the AI stuff, and just with Floss and in life and all that, man. You're always a source, not only of friendship, but inspiration for me. And I really appreciate it.
Dude, that feeling is mutual, man. Keep in touch with me like we always do. I'm excited just to hear about you personally too. We should tap in, even if it isn't now, like soon. Tap in and I want to check in with you.
All right, man. I'll let you get out of here, dude. But I love you, man. It's great talking with you.
Yeah, love you, brother.
All right, man.
See you soon.
Take care. Peace.
Bye.